Dr. Nia Vance moved quietly through the aisles of the flagship retail store she secretly owned, her keen eyes absorbing every detail as she immersed herself in the unfiltered reality of her company's day-to-day operations. A technology mogul known for her sharp intellect and unwavering dedication, Nia's decision to visit the store incognito was born not of curiosity alone, but of a deep-rooted responsibility and a desire to witness the true pulse of her enterprise beyond glossy reports and sanitized boardroom presentations. The air was filled with the soft murmur of customers browsing and the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. But beneath the surface of this routine commerce, tension simmered. As Nia rounded a corner, her attention was drawn to a sudden burst of raised voices echoing near the customer service desk. There, Mark Stevens, the store manager, was berating a young sales associate, his tone sharp and unforgiving over what appeared to be a minor error, a misplaced item, a forgotten detail, something trivial yet magnified by Mark's impatient fury. The associate's hands trembled, her face flushed with embarrassment and fear, caught in the crossfire of a man's harsh words that seemed disproportionately cruel. Nia's heart tightened as she watched the scene unfold, a pang of empathy stirring within her. She had built this empire with the belief that every individual mattered, that respect and kindness were not mere niceties but essential foundations of success. Unable to stand idly by, she stepped forward, her voice calm yet resolute, cutting through the tension. "Excuse me," she said gently, yet with an undeniable firmness that commanded attention. "Everyone makes mistakes. It's how we treat each other that defines us." Mark turned, his aggressive posture faltering for a brief moment as his eyes met hers. There was no hint of recognition in his gaze. He had no idea that this composed woman was the very person who signed his paycheck, the secret force behind the company's triumphs and trials. Instead, he saw only what he was accustomed to, another customer or perhaps an uninformed bystander. "I'm the manager here," Mark snapped, his voice sharp, "and I won't tolerate carelessness." His arrogance filled the space between them, a challenge wrapped in the guise of authority. But Nia stood her ground, unwavering. "And I won't tolerate cruelty," she replied softly, her words carrying the weight of conviction and the quiet power of a leader who knew when to step in and when to stand firm. The atmosphere thickened, charged with the clash of two wills, Mark's brash certainty against Nia's composed integrity. Around them, other employees and customers began to take notice, the usual bustle replaced by a palpable sense of anticipation, as if the store itself held its breath. This confrontation was more than a simple dispute. It was a microcosm of the values at stake in every corner of Nia's enterprise. Mark, blinded by his own sense of superiority and unaware of the woman's true identity, pressed on, his voice rising. "If you don't like how things are run, maybe you should find another store to shop at." But Nia's resolve only deepened. She leaned in slightly, her gaze steady and unwavering. "This is the store you manage," she said quietly, "and the people you lead deserve respect." The words hung between them, a silent indictment of the harshness Mark wielded so carelessly. In that moment, the store transformed, from a place of commerce to a stage where dignity and justice were being contested, where the true measure of leadership was laid bare. The sales associate, emboldened by Nia's support, lifted her head, a flicker of gratitude shining through her nervousness. Nia's intervention was more than a defense. It was a reaffirmation of the company's commitment to every employee's worth and humanity. Mark's arrogance began to crack under the weight of this quiet challenge, but he masked it with a final scoff and a dismissive wave. "We'll see how long you keep that idealism," he muttered, turning away to attend to other matters, his demeanor still edged with resentment. Yet as Nia watched him retreat, she felt a renewed determination rise within her. This encounter, small as it might seem, was a vital reminder of why she had chosen to come here anonymously, to reconnect with the people who made her vision real, to confront the gaps between ideals and reality, and to assert the values that would guide her company forward. The store's hum gradually returned, customers resuming their shopping, employees returning to their duties. But the impact of this moment lingered like an invisible current. Nia's presence had been a quiet force, a ripple in the fabric of daily life that challenged complacency and cruelty alike. As she moved toward the exit, blending once more into the sea of ordinary faces, Nia carried with her a profound sense of purpose. She was not just a distant CEO, but a guardian of the culture she had vowed to nurture. A culture where every voice mattered, and every act of kindness could tip the balance toward a better, more just future. The invisible tension between power and compassion, authority and empathy, had found its expression in a small but significant confrontation, and Nia knew that the true work of leadership was measured not in profits alone, but in the courage to confront injustice whenever it arose, no matter where or how. And so, with quiet strength and an unshakable sense of responsibility, Dr. Nia Vance continued her journey, not just across the store's aisles, but through the ongoing, complex landscape of human dignity and corporate integrity. Mark's fury swelled unchecked, a tempest fueled by his own rigid sense of authority and a desperate need to dominate the situation, blinding him to the consequences of his escalating hostility toward Nia. His voice, sharp and angry, echoed through the store, slicing through the hum of everyday life and drawing the attention of shoppers and employees alike, who gathered at a cautious distance, their faces etched with a mixture of shock, fear, and helplessness. Among them stood Daniel, the security guard, his stance tense and uncertain as he grappled with the conflict between his official duty to maintain order and his growing discomfort with Mark's aggressive behavior. The store, a place meant for commerce and community, was transformed into a stage for an unfolding drama of power and pain, where the weight of Mark's wrath pressed heavily on Nia. Words gave way to raw emotion as Mark's anger spiraled, stripping away the last vestiges of control. In a sudden, violent outburst, he raised his hand and delivered a sharp, stinging slap across Nia's face. The sound cracked through the stillness like thunder, an audible shockwave that silenced the murmurs of the crowd and sent a collective gasp rippling through those who witnessed the act. It was more than a physical blow. It was a public act of humiliation, a blatant assertion of dominance meant to shame and silence. Yet in that moment, Nia did not crumble. Though her hand instinctively rose to her reddened cheek, the pain etched there was met not with tears or submission, but with a profound, heart-wrenching disappointment that deepened the lines of her expression. Behind her eyes lay a quiet resolve, a strength born of suffering and survival, transforming what could have been a moment of defeat into a silent declaration of endurance. The crowd's shock was palpable, their fear mingling with a hesitant admiration for Nia's resilience in the face of such blatant cruelty. The scene captured the complex dynamics of power and vulnerability, where violence seeks to break but dignity quietly endures. Daniel, standing frozen between intervention and restraint, embodied the moral dilemma faced by many who witness injustice, torn between the impulse to act and the constraints of their role. The tension hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the fragility of safety and the courage it takes to stand firm when everything seems to threaten to collapse. Mark's rage, once a force that seemed unassailable, began to lose its grip as the silent strength in Nia's eyes challenged the narrative of dominance he sought to impose. The slap, intended to humiliate and control, inadvertently illuminated the depths of Nia's courage and the unspeakable pain endured by those subjected to abuse. This moment, raw, painful, and deeply human, revealed the complexities of power not as an absolute, but as something fragile, contested, and ultimately vulnerable to the quiet defiance of the human spirit. Nia's response, a mixture of sorrow and steadfastness, invited reflection on the costs of violence and the resilience required to reclaim one's sense of self amidst humiliation. The story unfolded as a poignant exploration of dignity under fire, the silent battles fought in public and private, and the indomitable will to survive without surrendering one's humanity. In the wake of the slap, the store remained heavy with unspoken emotions, the shock of violence, the discomfort of witnesses, and the lingering question of what justice and support look like in moments of crisis. Mark's unchecked aggression had torn open wounds beyond the physical, exposing the raw nerves of power imbalances and the urgent need for compassion and accountability. Through it all, Nia stood as a testament to the strength that can emerge from pain, a symbol of quiet resistance that refuses to be erased by fear or humiliation. The narrative carried a universal message, that even in the darkest moments the human spirit can find a way to hold on, to endure, and to inspire change through the courage to stand tall when it matters most. The collective breath held by the crowd, the hesitation in Daniel's movements, and the unwavering gaze of Nia wove together a compelling, emotional tableau, a story not only of cruelty and suffering but also of hope, dignity, and the potential for transformation born from resilience. The sharp crack of the slap shattered the suffocating silence that had settled over the room like a thick fog, a violent rupture that sent shockwaves through everyone present. Mark's chest heaved with heavy breaths as he looked around, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and triumph, convinced that he had finally gained the upper hand in the tense confrontation that had been simmering beneath the surface for too long. The smugness on his face was a thin veneer masking the reality that this moment of dominance was fragile, fleeting, an illusion about to be dismantled by the woman he had underestimated. Slowly, deliberately, Nia lowered her hand from where it had struck his cheek, the faintest hint of a smirk replaced by a gaze so cold and resolute it could have frozen the air itself. Her eyes, dark and unwavering, locked onto Mark's with a piercing clarity that left no doubt about the depths of her resolve. The room, filled moments ago with stifled tension, now felt suspended in a charged stillness as if time itself had paused to witness the unfolding power shift. Without hesitation, Nia reached for her phone, the simple motion imbued with authority and intent. She tapped the screen and placed a call, her voice dropping into a tone so sharp and commanding it seemed to reverberate through the walls like a gavel striking down judgment. Gone was the calm woman who had engaged in measured dialogue just minutes before. In her place stood a leader who wielded her power with ruthless precision and unyielding control. "Freeze all store assets," she instructed coldly, her words clipped and deliberate, leaving no room for negotiation or delay. "Terminate all management staff effective immediately." The clarity of her commands sent a ripple of stunned silence through the room, each syllable carrying the weight of irrevocable consequences. The staff, many of whom had stood nervously on the sidelines or taken tentative sides, found themselves immobilized by the magnitude of what had just been unleashed. Mark, whose smug victory had barely begun to settle in, felt the crushing realization descend upon him like an avalanche. His eyes flickered with panic and confusion, struggling to reconcile the slap's immediate physical impact with the far-reaching strategic assault that Nia had now orchestrated. The room was no longer just a battleground for personal grievances. It had transformed into the epicenter of a corporate reckoning, a sweeping purge that would dismantle the very foundation of the power structures Mark had relied upon. The other store staff exchanged uneasy glances, their disbelief mingling with fear and awe. For many, Nia's words were a revelation of a side of her they had never seen. Cold, calculating, and utterly unyielding in her pursuit of justice and control. The emotional gravity was overwhelming. This was not merely a reaction to a momentary insult, but a deliberate, strategic counterstrike designed to reclaim authority and redefine the balance of power. The silence that followed was thick, a heavy curtain that seemed to absorb every heartbeat and whisper, as those present grappled with the enormity of the unfolding drama. Mark's usual bravado evaporated, replaced by a palpable vulnerability as he realized that he had misjudged Nia's capacity for retaliation and leadership. The slap, once perceived as a sudden outburst of anger, was now understood as the catalyst for a meticulously planned takeover, a declaration that her strength was not to be underestimated. Nia's eyes never wavered from Mark's, holding him captive in their relentless gaze as if daring him to challenge the inevitability of the consequences she had set in motion. The other employees, too, felt the shifting tides. Alliances previously assumed were questioned, and the future of the store, its leadership, and their own livelihoods hung precariously in the balance. The cold efficiency of Nia's orders underscored the ruthlessness sometimes necessary to dismantle entrenched systems of control, reminding everyone present that power, once wielded irresponsibly, can be swiftly and decisively reclaimed. In that moment, the store was no longer just a workplace but a microcosm of broader struggles, between justice and corruption, between silence and voice, between weakness and strength. The emotional resonance of the scene lingered long after the echoes of Nia's command faded, a testament to the complex interplay of human dignity, ambition, and the desire for redemption. The staff, Mark included, were forced to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and the dynamics they had enabled or resisted. For Nia, this was a defining moment, a transformation from victim to victor, from reactive to proactive, from vulnerable to invincible. Her calculated response not only altered the course of her own journey, but sent a clear message to anyone who might underestimate her resolve or question her capacity to lead. The power balance in the room had irrevocably shifted, and the echoes of that shift would be felt long after the initial shock had passed. In the cold aftermath of her command, Nia stood as a symbol of unyielding strength and strategic brilliance, a reminder that sometimes the most devastating responses are not those fueled by passion, but those executed with icy precision and unwavering resolve. The stunned silence persisted as Mark and the remaining staff processed the reality that their world had just been turned upside down, that the consequences of a single moment, the slap, had unleashed a storm far greater than anyone had anticipated. This was not just a story of conflict or humiliation. It was a profound narrative about the reclaiming of power, the price of arrogance, and the courage it takes to rise above betrayal and injustice. And as the store's fate hung in the balance, one truth stood clear and unassailable. In the face of cold, calculated strength, no challenge is insurmountable, and no legacy is beyond redemption. The tension in the room was almost suffocating, thick with disbelief and simmering anger as Mark's voice trembled and rose in a desperate, stammering challenge. His face was flushed crimson, veins throbbing with fury as he tried to assert control over a situation rapidly slipping from his grasp. "Who do you think you are?" he demanded, his words laced with incredulity and a brittle arrogance born of long-held power. His eyes darted wildly between Nia and the growing crowd that had gathered, each person hanging on his every shaky word, sensing the precariousness of the moment. But Nia, unmoved and resolute, stood with a calmness so profound it sliced through the storm of emotion swirling in the room. There was no hesitation, no flicker of doubt in her eyes, only an unshakable certainty that echoed louder than any outburst. She lifted her gaze to meet Mark's directly, then turned to the assembled onlookers who were caught in a mix of shock, curiosity, and anticipation. It was as though the air itself had shifted, charged now with the weight of what was about to unfold. Then, with deliberate and graceful precision, Nia reached into her pocket and drew out a sleek platinum-plated card that shimmered under the harsh fluorescent lights. The crowd leaned in involuntarily, their breath caught in their throats as they read the embossed letters bearing her name and title. Dr. Nia Vance. This was not just a card. It was a symbol of authority, a powerful statement of ownership and control that instantly rewrote the narrative. "You can't fire me," she said, her voice calm yet commanding, "because you're fired." Those words crashed over the room like a wave, the finality in her tone leaving no room for argument or retreat. The murmurs rose into a crescendo of astonishment and admiration as everyone processed the stunning reversal of power. Mark's expression transformed dramatically, from fiery rage to pale shock, his confidence crumbling into raw panic. The man who had once dominated this space with unchecked arrogance was now unmasked as vulnerable and defeated. His breath came quicker, his words faltering as he grappled with the harsh truth that his grip on control had been utterly severed. The slow unraveling of his facade was both a spectacle and a cautionary tale, a visceral reminder that power built on intimidation and hubris is fragile and often fleeting. In contrast, Nia's composure never wavered. She was the embodiment of quiet strength and strategic clarity. Every movement she made, every word she uttered reinforced her rightful place at the helm. As the room absorbed this seismic shift, Daniel, the security guard who had stood watch silently throughout the ordeal, exhaled softly, a sound almost lost amid the growing whispers. His relief was palpable. He knew, without a doubt, that he was now standing on the side of justice and legitimacy, witnessing the rightful restoration of order. This was more than a corporate coup or a mere change in leadership. It was an emotional climax that resonated deeply with universal themes of resilience, justice, and the power of truth. Nia's revelation was a triumph not just of legal ownership, but of personal dignity and unyielding courage. In the face of bullying and attempts to silence her, she had stood firm and claimed her place, refusing to be diminished or erased. The crowd's reaction was telling. They were not just witnessing a transfer of power, but a symbolic victory for anyone who has ever felt marginalized or underestimated. This moment became a beacon of hope, illustrating that integrity and resolve can overturn even the most entrenched systems of control. The energy in the room shifted palpably, from tension and uncertainty to a vibrant sense of renewal and possibility. Those present realized that the old order had fallen, and a new chapter was beginning under Nia's leadership, one grounded in fairness, transparency, and respect. Beyond the immediate drama, this revelation spoke to something deeply human. The desire to be seen, to be recognized for one's true worth, and to rise above adversity. Nia's calm authority in this moment was not merely a performance, but the culmination of a journey marked by perseverance and unwavering belief in herself. The emotional impact lingered long after the initial shock subsided, reminding everyone that power is not an entitlement, but a responsibility that must be earned and defended with courage. This stunning turn of events left an indelible mark on all who witnessed it, a testament to the enduring strength of principled leadership and the transformative power of standing one's ground. As the room slowly settled, a collective exhale seemed to release the tension, replaced by a hopeful anticipation for what lay ahead under Dr. Nia Vance's guidance. The story of her stunning revelation became a narrative not just about business or authority, but about justice, redemption, and the human spirit's capacity to reclaim what is rightfully theirs, even in the face of overwhelming odds. In that moment, the ultimate emotional climax was reached, delivering a profound message. True power belongs to those who dare to claim it with integrity, courage, and unwavering resolve. Nia's journey to reclaim her family's company was a story rich with emotional complexity, quiet determination, and a profound sense of duty that transcended mere business ambition. It began years ago, in a time shadowed by hardship and sacrifice, when her late father, a visionary entrepreneur whose dreams had built the company from the ground up, was forced to make a heart-wrenching decision. The financial downturn that struck was brutal and unrelenting, threatening to crush the very foundation he had laid with unwavering passion and relentless effort. Unable to weather the storm alone, he reluctantly sold a controlling stake to investors, a move that saved the company from collapse but simultaneously fractured his dream and left a deep wound in the family's legacy. For Nia, who was young at the time, witnessing this sacrifice was both painful and formative. She saw the pride dim in her father's eyes and felt the weight of what had been lost. Not just the ownership of a business, but the control over a vision that had been his life's work. That moment seared itself into her memory, planting a seed of resolve that would define her path for years to come. In the years that followed, Nia poured herself into the tech industry, a world of innovation and rapid change where she proved her mettle through intelligence, creativity, and tenacity. She built a reputation and a fortune on her own terms, navigating challenges and seizing opportunities with the same bold spirit her father had shown. Yet beneath her successes lay an ever-present quiet mission: to reclaim what was once hers by right, piece by piece, and to restore her family's company to its rightful place. But this was no straightforward task. The corporate world she sought to infiltrate was filled with wary eyes and guarded secrets, and the investors who now held the controlling stake were not oblivious to threats. To protect her efforts from sabotage or interference, Nia moved with deliberate caution and careful anonymity. Each share she purchased was done under layers of secrecy, through intermediaries, shell companies, and complex legal maneuvers designed to cloak her identity. This cloak of invisibility was essential. If her enemies had caught wind of her plans, they might have raised obstacles, inflated prices, or worse, tried to push her out entirely. The emotional toll of this secret campaign was immense. Nia bore the weight of a double life, balancing the public persona of a successful tech entrepreneur with the private burden of a hidden struggle that few understood. The loneliness was profound. She could not confide in many about the true nature of her efforts, and the isolation that comes with carrying such a secret was a constant challenge. Yet her resolve never wavered. Every small victory, a successful acquisition, a favorable deal, a moment when the shares in her possession grew, was a quiet affirmation of her purpose. She was not merely buying stock. She was reclaiming a legacy, honoring the sacrifices her father had made, and breathing life back into a dream nearly lost to the tides of fortune. This slow, deliberate process took years, demanding patience, strategic thinking, and emotional fortitude, all underscored by the fierce love she held for her family's heritage. Throughout this journey, Nia often reflected on the man who had started it all. Her father's vision was not simply about building a profitable enterprise. It was about creating something enduring, a testament to innovation, resilience, and integrity. That vision had been compromised but never extinguished. She felt his presence guiding her decisions, inspiring her to persevere when the road ahead seemed long and uncertain. The reclamation of the company was as much an act of filial devotion as it was a business maneuver, an effort to restore not just assets, but pride, history, and meaning. Her strategy was meticulous, born of a deep understanding of the corporate landscape and a personal connection to the stakes involved. Every purchase was more than a financial transaction. It was a reaffirmation of identity and a step toward healing a wound that had festered in silence for too long. When the moment finally arrived for Nia to reveal her ownership, it was a culmination of years of quiet work and emotional endurance. The unveiling was not just a dramatic corporate coup, but a poignant homecoming. It was a reclaiming of honor, a restoration of what was once taken, and a tribute to the enduring power of legacy and family bonds. The company's boardroom, once dominated by investors who had dismissed her family's place, was now confronted with the undeniable fact of her control, shifting the balance of power and reshaping the company's future. But more than that, it was a victory over the isolation, doubt, and pain she had endured along the way. It symbolized the triumph of perseverance and love over loss and adversity. Nia's story is compelling not only because of the business acumen and strategic prowess she displayed, but because it is deeply human and relatable. It speaks to anyone who has experienced the sting of loss, the frustration of seeing something precious slip away, and the determination to fight quietly, patiently, and with unwavering faith to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. Her journey illuminates the emotional landscape behind corporate victories, the sacrifices, the loneliness, the moments of doubt, and the profound satisfaction of achieving a dream that honors the past while shaping the future. In reclaiming her family's company, Nia reclaimed more than ownership. She reclaimed a legacy of resilience, love, and enduring hope, reminding us all that true success often requires not just talent and strategy, but heart and an unbreakable spirit. The atmosphere in the store shifted instantly, as if the very air had thickened with the weight of impending justice, when the corporate security team quietly but firmly made their way through the crowd toward Mark. The man who had only moments before wielded his arrogance like a weapon, commanding the space with an air of misplaced entitlement, was now visibly unraveling. His once confident stride faltered. His eyes darted nervously, seeking an escape that did not exist. Mark's facade of power and control crumbled before the eyes of everyone present, leaving exposed the raw vulnerability of a man stripped bare by the undeniable truth of his actions. His voice broke as he reached out toward Nia, desperation bleeding into every syllable of his rushed, stammered apologies. "I'm sorry," he pleaded, each word tumbling out with the frantic urgency of a man realizing too late the consequences of his behavior. But Nia, standing tall and unwavering, met his gaze with a silence that was louder than any rebuke. She did not flinch, did not offer the forgiveness he sought. Instead, her calm refusal to engage spoke volumes, a powerful testament to her strength and dignity in the face of humiliation she had endured but refused to tolerate any longer. Around them, the crowd held its breath, a collective witness to the dismantling of an arrogant bully whose reign of entitlement had finally come to an end. As Mark was gently but resolutely guided toward the exit by security, the murmurs of onlookers swelled, a mixture of disbelief, satisfaction, and relief. Heads turned, eyes wide with the surreal sight of a man who had once exuded dominance now reduced to a trembling, sobbing figure pleading for mercy that would not come. Tears traced slow paths down Mark's cheeks, mingling shame, fear, and regret into a raw portrait of human frailty laid bare in public. The stark contrast between the man who had caused pain through his abuse of power and the broken individual before them struck a chord deep within the hearts of everyone watching. It was not simply a scene of retribution, but one of profound catharsis, a moment where the scales of justice visibly tipped, offering a release not only for those directly harmed, but for the community as a whole. In witnessing Mark's downfall, the audience found a powerful reminder that arrogance and cruelty inevitably carry consequences, no matter how deeply entrenched privilege may seem. Yet beneath the spectacle of his humiliation lay a deeper truth, that respect and human dignity are not privileges to be wielded selectively, but rights that belong to every individual, regardless of their status or background. Nia's silent strength in this moment was emblematic of the resilience of those who have been marginalized and silenced. Her refusal to grant Mark the relief of acknowledgement spoke to a broader, universal refusal to accept injustice. It was a quiet but potent declaration that those who seek to diminish others will ultimately face the weight of accountability. The store itself, once a charged arena where tension and conflict had simmered beneath the surface, seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The oppressive shadow that Mark had cast was lifting, replaced by an atmosphere charged with renewed dignity and hope. This moment marked not only the end of Mark's abusive behavior, but the beginning of healing for everyone who had suffered under his unjust dominance. The echoes of this scene would linger far beyond the closing of the store doors, imprinting itself in the collective memory of the community as a testament to the power of standing firm against wrongdoing. It was an invitation for reflection on the dynamics of power, privilege, and respect in everyday life, urging a commitment to empathy, fairness, and courage. The experience underscored a vital lesson. True strength does not come from asserting dominance over others, but from embodying compassion and holding oneself and others accountable to the highest standards of integrity. As the security team led Mark away, the store's patrons and employees found themselves united by a shared sense of justice restored and a collective hope for a future where dignity is the norm rather than the exception. The doors closed behind him with a finality that resonated deeply, signaling not just the physical removal of a man who had caused harm, but a symbolic cleansing of a space that would now be reclaimed by respect, fairness, and community. In the aftermath, life moved forward, stronger, more united, and more determined to uphold the values that had been so nearly broken. This chapter in the company's history became a powerful story of transformation, reminding everyone that even in the face of arrogance and cruelty, justice can prevail and humanity can be restored. It was a moment that allowed wounds to begin healing, voices to rise with renewed confidence, and hope to flourish for a kinder, fairer tomorrow. In the wake of Mark's sudden departure, the atmosphere within the company was thick with a mix of relief, uncertainty, and cautious hope. For months, the staff had endured a toxic environment marked by fear and tension, their daily work overshadowed by the weight of unspoken grievances and moments of silent despair. Mark's behavior had eroded trust and created divisions that seemed at times impossible to heal. But as the dust settled, a new chapter began, one led by Nia, a leader whose courage and empathy had already begun to kindle change. Recognizing the pain and disruption her team had suffered, Nia called for a meeting, gathering the remaining staff in the modest conference room that had witnessed countless challenges and successes. The room was filled with quiet anticipation, the employees' faces reflecting a spectrum of emotions: guarded hope, lingering anxiety, and the fragile optimism of those who longed for healing but feared disappointment. Nia stepped forward with a measured calm, knowing that this moment was more than a routine company gathering. It was a chance to address wounds left raw by months of turmoil and to lay the foundation for a future marked by respect and dignity. With deep sincerity, Nia began by apologizing for the chaos that had permeated the workplace under the previous leadership. She acknowledged the pain and distress experienced by many, never minimizing the impact that Mark's conduct had inflicted on the team's morale and sense of safety. Her voice was steady but filled with empathy, conveying a genuine commitment to righting past wrongs. "I want to acknowledge the hardships we've faced together, and assure you that what happened will never happen again under my watch," she said. This promise was not an empty corporate platitude but a heartfelt vow, a beacon of reassurance to those who had felt voiceless and vulnerable. The room, though quiet, responded to her words with a subtle but growing shift in energy, as the team sensed the sincerity behind her pledge and the possibility of a new beginning. Nia's gaze then turned to the young sales associate who had become a symbol of resilience throughout the ordeal. This employee had endured humiliation and unfair treatment, yet she never faltered. Her quiet strength and dedication inspired Nia deeply and became a catalyst for the change Nia sought to foster. Standing before the group, Nia praised the young woman's hard work, integrity, and unwavering courage. She spoke not just as a manager but as someone who had witnessed firsthand the toll prejudice and injustice could take and the extraordinary strength required to withstand it. "Your perseverance has been nothing short of remarkable," Nia said, her voice filled with admiration and respect. Then, in a moment charged with emotion, she announced the employee's promotion to a new role, one that reflected her true potential and recognized the invaluable contribution she had made to the company's resilience. This public recognition was more than a professional advancement. It was a powerful affirmation of worth and dignity. The young sales associate's reaction was immediate and deeply moving. Tears welled up in her eyes, and a heartfelt expression of gratitude poured forth. The years of silent struggle and self-doubt melting away in that instant. Her voice trembled as she thanked Nia for believing in her, for standing up when others had not, and for creating a space where she could finally be seen and valued for who she was. The vulnerability in her words struck a chord with everyone present, breaking through the remaining walls of fear and despair. In that moment, the conference room transformed from a place of past wounds into a sanctuary of hope, where the promise of respect and dignity became tangible. The emotional weight that had burdened the team lifted, replaced by a shared sense of renewal and trust. This gathering marked a turning point, not just for the company's leadership, but for the very culture that defined it. Nia's commitment to fostering an environment where every employee felt safe, heard, and respected resonated deeply, inspiring a collective shift in mindset. The narrative of that day extended beyond titles and promotions. It was a story of emotional healing and empowerment, illustrating how leadership rooted in compassion and accountability can transform even the most fractured teams. The staff, once fractured by fear, now began to see themselves as a united community capable of overcoming adversity together. Nia understood that rebuilding trust would require ongoing effort and humility. She spoke openly about the importance of transparency, continuous dialogue, and support systems that would nurture well-being and respect at every level. "We are not just rebuilding a company," she reminded them. "We are building a culture, one where dignity is non-negotiable and where every person's voice matters." Her words planted seeds of hope that would grow with each passing day, as employees felt increasingly empowered to contribute, collaborate, and thrive in an environment free from prejudice and fear. The emotional journey that unfolded in that meeting encapsulated a universal truth about leadership and healing: that true progress arises not merely from correcting past mistakes, but from cultivating a culture of empathy, respect, and shared humanity. Nia's actions and the staff's heartfelt response underscored that while mistakes can scar, the courage to confront them openly and to uplift one another can heal and transform. The promotion of the young sales associate became a symbol of this transformation, a tangible reminder that resilience and integrity are recognized and rewarded, and that hope can flourish even after the darkest storms. As the meeting drew to a close, the energy in the room was palpably different. The lingering tension and apprehension had given way to a renewed sense of purpose and solidarity. Colleagues exchanged glances, smiles began to reappear, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing one is respected and valued began to take root. Nia's leadership had not only changed the company's direction, but had rekindled the spirit of its people. In the days and weeks that followed, the company embarked on a journey of cultural renewal, marked by ongoing initiatives to promote inclusion, fairness, and open communication. Nia's promise was no longer just words spoken in a meeting. It was a living commitment reflected in policies, behaviors, and everyday interactions. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined the company's identity. Instead, they became the foundation upon which a stronger, more compassionate, and more just workplace was built, one where every employee could look forward to a future filled with hope, trust, and opportunity. From the moment Nia stepped into her new role as leader of the company, it became clear that she was not interested in the traditional trappings of power that often defined leadership in the corporate world. Instead, she envisioned a radically different kind of leadership, one rooted in empathy, respect, and genuine empowerment. Nia understood that the true strength of any organization lay not in the authority of its leaders, but in the well-being, dignity, and growth of its people. With this conviction, she immediately set to work transforming the company culture, beginning with the simple but profound act of listening. Unlike many who occupy positions of power, Nia made it her mission to know her employees not just as workers but as human beings with stories, dreams, and struggles. She spent hours walking the floor, engaging in heartfelt conversations and encouraging open dialogue where everyone's voice was heard and valued. It was this spirit of collaboration that laid the foundation for the sweeping changes she would implement. Recognizing that respect and inclusion